Hey, Diva Gals, we have a very special treat for you today. We're here with Florencia Lozano. You probably remember her from One Life to Live. Well, now she's written a very powerful movie called Life After You, which is dealing with the loss of a child from drug abuse. So we're so happy to have you here today. Tell me about this movie. It is truly heartbreaking.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here to talk about this movie because, it's an important conversation to be having now. Um, a reporter, Charlene Giannetti, uh, brought this project to me. She had interviewed a woman called Linda Latterman, whose son, Danny Latterman, had died when he had overdosed on heroin that had been laced with fentanyl. And Charlene interviewed Linda. Linda had, in the month after her son died, um, at a loss for what else to do, she wrote a Facebook post that ended up going viral. And she ended up, because there was so much feedback, there were so many people who were going through similar things, experiencing similar kind of pain and loss and confusion and despair. She wrote a short book called Life After You: What Your Death from Drugs Leaves Behind. And it really was a mother's cry from the heart. Um, and it was meant to really scare kids into realizing, look, there are drugs out there now on the street that will kill you if you try them once and you get a bad batch. You get a batch with fentanyl in them. There's a lot of fentanyl out there now, and it's being used in all kinds of different drugs, pills and coke and in a lot of different kinds. So it was meant to sound that alarm bell and to tell kids who oftentimes, when we're younger, we don't understand mortality in the same way we do when we start to become adults and realize that life actually is finite, and when you die it's over. And kids sometimes feel this sort of immortality. It won't happen to me. I'm young, I'm vital, I'm healthy, I can take it. But the nature of these drugs is such that, you know, if you take a risk one night, that might be your last night of life.
You play the mom in this movie. How hard was it for you to tap into those emotions? Are you a mom yourself?
I mean, I honestly don't know if I could have done it if I was a mom. I think having a little distance was actually helpful to be able to even imagine the situation, because it really is sort of unimaginable, um, to think of your own kids dying in this way. Linda and Tito, her husband, found Danny in his room. He had been using right there in the house. He was 19, he was attending community college. They had wanted to give him some degree of privacy, so his door had a lock on it. They never went in, but the drug paraphernalia was right there. Um, and her book sort of argues for, like, if you think you know what your kid is doing, you don't. I thought I knew. They had a great relationship. Linda considered Danny to be her best friend. And Danny would tell his mom that she was his best friend. But when it comes to opiates, especially, the way that they can affect your brain is very specific and is incredibly powerful. So it's incredibly dangerous to start to experiment with those drugs, to say nothing of the fact that now um, there is a drug on the street that is in a lot of these drugs. So kids really need to know about this. They really need to know what they're getting into.
What was
And that's why we made this movie.
what was one of the most poignant scenes for you in the film?
I think that the regret that she feels, looking back and every family member, because we don't just focus on Linda, we focus on Tito and Danny's two siblings too. The whole family grieves in different ways, but the guilt that Linda feels, uh, wondering, is there something she could have done differently? There's a scene where she's flashing back to a memory where in her when she remembers the scene, she thinks, oh God, I missed that. I missed him scratching himself here, which is a sign oftentimes of heroin users, that they can get very itchy. Their skin can get very itchy, and the way it pains her in that moment to think, oh God, I it was right in front of me and I didn't see it. um and by that time it's too late. Playing that kind of regret, playing that kind of like, uh the way she replays over and over in her head, how could I have changed the outcome, was really heartbreaking to me.
You actually were one of the writers on this film. Tell me how you got involved and why you wanted to be behind the cameras as well.
I love writing. I used to write short stories when I was younger, and then I started writing plays. I'd never written for camera before, but when the reporter told me about this project, I went and met Linda. And the way she talked about how she continued to talk to her son after he was gone really set my imagination on fire. And I thought, what if we were to tell this story in a somewhat, one foot in reality and one foot in an imagined reality, in a more surreal world where, um, she she can't let him go. And that kind of storytelling interested me, as opposed to a straight up sort of retelling of the book that she wrote, or a chronological accounting of the timeline after Danny's birth. This is more an imaginative exercise in terms of after her son is gone, as she tries to understand what he was going through, um, which we'll never really know, right? Um, but it was really her attempt to accept the fact that he is gone.
The film has been receiving a lot of accolades. Where are we going to be able to see it next?
Well, I'm thrilled to tell you that on April 5th, which is next Tuesday, it will be in your household. It'll be on pay-per-view. It'll be on, basically, you can rent it on, like, I was told like 100% of the households in the US, um, on one form or another. If you have cable, you can rent it. Um, it's also going to be shown on airlines and in hotels. Um, yeah, there's going to be quite a lot of distribution.
Now, people do know you from television, One Life to Live, Narcos. What are you doing next? Where can we see you? What's your next big project?
So I was lucky enough to be part of a Netflix show that we filmed in Vancouver last year. The show is called, it's a limited, well, it's a, what is it called? An anthology series. And so this first season is called Keep Breathing, and it's about, it's survival stories. So Melissa Barrera, who was in The Heights, she plays a woman who basically gets in a plane crash. And as she finds the will, the endurance, the skill to live, to survive that situation, she faces the demons of her past. And I am one of those people that she confronts in her past.
Now, you've had a little taste of being behind the camera as a writer. Would you like to continue in that vein, write more projects, maybe even direct?
I love writing, and I feel like now more than ever, it's important for women of color, for Latinas to to articulate our personal experience in the world, because there's a way in which we tend to be painted with a very broad brush, and our experiences are unique. And somehow, the more unique they are articulated, the more universal they seem to be. So I'm really interested in writing and acting, and also producing those stories that I feel like um, need to be told, need to be heard, aren't heard enough. Um, so yeah, all of those things.
I think you would be great in any position, in front of the camera, behind the camera. We've already seen how talented you are, and I know our Diva Gals cannot wait to see this movie, Life After You, which you can catch on pay-per-view, on airplanes, in hotels, starting on April 5th. Thank you so much for speaking with us today and talking about this very important subject all moms need to know about.
Thank you so much for speaking with me. It was a pleasure.